I'm very excited to be here. I'm really intrigued by the whole idea of place and what that means to people. To me, place is actually where I was in those moments, not so much the actual bricks and mortar of the physical place. And I want to just share just a couple of things before I start reading. I have 4 poems, and they sort of go in order as to where I began to where I am now. And when I start to think back about memories when I was young, and the first poem, does talk about when I was young, I thought back to having a conversation with my grandfather. Granddaddy George is what I called him. And I remember he asked me, he said, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" And I said, "I either want to be an opera singer or I want to be a writer." And he said, "Oh, darling, you don't have the voice to be an opera singer." But he didn't say I didn't have the voice to be a writer, so I'm here. So my first poem is Country Life. I think it's pretty obvious what it's about. I come from a town of only about 200 and something people, very little opportunity, farmland, a lot of Brunswick stew and tobacco. If you don't know what Brunswick stew is, you've led a miserable life. Country life. That sort of life ain't nothing to sneeze at. Each plant and crop has a soul, and when lost is mourned. We smirked during the reruns of the Porter Wagner show as we shelled the beans with toughened fingertips. Layers of skin peeled from the sun, emotions only shown near a stiffened body, my poetry caged in boxes under beds, dreams were for the greedy. That sort of life ain't nothing to take on a weak stomach. Each memory lives longer than its human host, ignored like a dog in an outside pen until after supper time. Dinner time, we said "I love you" with buttered everything. The larger the meal, the more sorry we were. We were always apologizing for something, it seemed. The burnt car, a playground, the trees, a jungle gym covered with thorn, hanging laundry outside in the dead of winter, hugging a towel's body straight off the line like it was a newborn child. That sort of living ain't nothing that can be understood by newcomers. You pass a kinfolk's gravestone on the way to school and cry behind the trees on the way home, returned with purposely skinned knees to divert the attention from the tears. There are only the strong or lazy. The sick, the weak, the different are the highlights of the afternoon phone calls. Years later, my ears burn, throwing the tobacco worms in a bucket with pity, hanging tobacco in the smokehouse, the back of sticks splinter my hands and my dreams, and it is now the country life that I hide under my bed. I was hoping my dad was going to be here tonight. They are scared to death of anything that is weather unless it is sunshine. So he was not able to make it, but I'm reading this, dedicating this to him, and this is actually one of the hardest poems I've ever had to write, and most people who know my poetry wouldn't think so by listening to it, but it is. It's called Angelina Ballerina, and just a note, if you don't remember my name, it's Angela Carter. Okay. Angelina Ballerina. My feet on top of your muddy hunting shoes, dancing to Hank Williams Sr. Around in a circle I twirled with you, my short tomboy hair resting on your bright orange vest. In that moment, every strand felt long and perfect with pin curls. Your camouflage coat smelled of the breath of snow. You looked down at my adoring eyes, my self-conscious reflection in the brown of yours, confirming the lights once inside of me are no longer. You called me Angelina Ballerina when you were playful. You wanted my voice to remain innocent and small, easy to trick out of those moments of silence. It is comfortable silence I have sought in a husband, needing a stubbled beard scratching my aged cheek, wanting you to hunt for both of my lips as they pronounce, "Daddy, you could not have protected me from those things, and I cannot protect you from who those things made me become." I've got two more. This one is dedicated to my two little girls over there, Eve and Nori. They get easily embarrassed, but one day they're going to thank me for calling them out like that. Amen. Yeah. This poem is called New Tags and All. My labor, its fruit, the flowering seeds of a limp weed. You can't ever take away any scar of mine, but instead they are concealed completely by your faith in my arms as I hold you in midair. Your open fist of 10 swimming men that paddle and float slightly to reach me, that walk your legs learned on its own without me, unstable and fidgety, now steady and planned. These things mesmerize me. Unpainted heart, I want to cover you eggshell white, discard any future black and gray that I could stain you with. Mold the falter world surrounding us as if it is paper mache. I see the girl I could have been peeking out of the corners of your eyes, waving, playing, fulfilled through your skin. My life relived, eggshell white. You were my first breaths, the first time I felt swaddled, my answered cry for the milk of life. Thank you. This last poem really signifies a journey that I have made in my life. I have not had an easy one. But when you get to that point of forgiveness, I swear to you folks, there is no place like it other than maybe heaven. And it's an amazing place to be, because when you live your life upset about what you don't have, what you could have, what somebody else has, who cares? Forgiveness is the biggest part, because with that you become your full potential. Who cares what anybody else can be? But because of forgiveness, I'm a lot more than I used to be. And this poem is about that time when I forgive everything that has happened wrong in my life. Simply forgiveness. If you do love me, I need you to accept these words as if they were the note left on my deathbed. That every punctuation mark is a bleeding wound with an outdated tourniquet that causes harm. Please accept that my mouth will not be closed, even in bereavement, that I can no longer be sensitive to the lowering of your brows. Pretend that in my last breath, you would take your finger, and instead of shushing my lips, you would search for my tongue. You would fight to return my beating heart. You beg me to speak until there is no breath left in my stomach, not even to whistle through the imperfect gaps of my teeth. Pretend that this moment exists now. Say to me that you did the best you knew how, and it fell short of being enough, that there is no longer a law in your eyes that upholds silence. I forgive that you spent years breaking each individual finger of your own demon's hand, not realizing his other hand was strongest. I forgive that you watched my body close enough, not knowing it was my spirit that had been missing. I forgive myself because I accepted merely breathing in exchange for living. And it is here, this moment I need, that I close my eyes and my lips part to your ear. I will find the blanket that we covered the past with and move it to dry ground. Your arm will stretch around my shoulders to soothe my opposite ear, my ear as small as it was years ago. It can accept the intentions of your aged hand as being fully reborn, and I will be content in silence for once, just knowing you were eager to listen. Thank you. I'm going to do a shameless plug here. I have a book coming out in 2014. My web address, if you want to visit, is angelacarterpoetry.com.